Welcome to the She Births Show podcast, Season 2. I'm Nadine Richardson, mother, yoga teacher, doula, author and speaker. Founder of the world's only scientifically verified childbirth education program, She Births, and host of your She Births Show. We created the She Births Show on audio and YouTube as a place to inspire your birth, evolve your parenting, and help you live a life that you love. Through the She Births course and community support, we are proud to have supported thousands of families with the education to facilitate a better birthing experience as well as better breastfeeding, including initiation and continuation. You can log into our free app and learn more from our videos and resources. Can you imagine a world where gentle parenting is the norm, where there's no pressure to have a good baby or be anything other than you are as a mum or dad, where social media encourages you to follow your heart, embrace your curves, and value the time and connection that you have with your child and that uniqueness of an unfolding, mysterious journey that you're traveling together, where we even consider the fact that our child could actually teach us something about life and ourselves. Well, my next guest is what we call the guru of breastfeeding and gentle parenting, Pinky McKay. She and I are extremely passionate about creating a world where children and that role of parenting is deeply honoured and held sacred. Pinky is Australia's most recognised breastfeeding expert. She is international board-certified lactation consultant. She's a best-selling author of 4 titles, including Parenting by Heart, Sleeping Like a Baby, and Toddler Tactics. Pinky specialises in parenting styles that honour mothers' natural instincts to respond to their babies. Her books are endorsed by the Australian Breastfeeding Association and the La Leche League International. Her get real, no-nonsense approach comes from being a mother of 5 and grandmother of 3. And she's even presented a TEDx talk, check it out, called Surrender is Not a Dirty Word, as well as created Booby Bickies, baby massage DVDs, e-programs. There's heaps on her website, shopwithpinky.com. So I really hope you enjoy our conversation and the laughs that we have. And hopefully you find some good pearls of wisdom that allow you to trust how extraordinary you are as a mother or a father. Welcome, Pinky McKay. It is such an honour to have you here on our show, our She Births show, because you are a legend in the world of my mums. They just adore you and so many other mothers around Australia and around the world, and you've achieved so much, it's crazy. And thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm humbled that you invited me. I just feel great. You're the birth guru.
Birth guru meets breastfeeding and parenting, sleep guru.
It all sort of follows along, doesn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, we were just having our little chat before, and what was the analogy you said? Sometimes our work is a bit like what?
It's a bit like chipping away at an elephant with a toothpick, I think. Now that technology is coming in and fear's coming in and women are having more interventionist births, obviously birth is the beginning. I kind of think of it as the first step into the unknown for the love of your baby or your child.
That's beautiful.
That birth and trusting that, or whatever you go through during that birth, prepares you for the next stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that your TED talk about surrender is not a dirty word. Like, that word gets used so much in people's sort of pregnancy and the lead up to birth, and people sort of bandy it about and they're just like, just surrender, you'll be fine. But to the average woman who's kind of sat in her life and had goals and worked really hard, and since feminism been able to play this game in the world of linearity and achievement and control, it's a petrifying word, right?
Oh, totally. And I think we've sort of become more masculine brained in a lot of ways, haven't we? Guys set goals and they make a plan and they go to it and they tick off the boxes. And we have to do things very differently, particularly when we have children.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to, I don't know about you, and I shouldn't maybe be talking about retirement soon, but I'm looking forward to retiring, moving down the South Coast and sitting around in a circle of women and just basket weaving. I kind of think that would be really great.
Nice, because I don't even know how to plan retirement. I mean, I'm perfectly old enough to be retired, but I don't even know what I want to do. Like, I can't do nothing. And I sort of see myself as being this, crusty old lady.
With pink hair.
With pink hair. A bit like my nana, when we were talking about home birth starting in New Zealand, and I was living there. I mean, I am from New Zealand originally, and I was staying with my nana with my 2 kids, and she minded them while I went off to a home birth meeting before the home birth kind of got in the 70s, before it all got, happening again in New Zealand, because it had happened before. And she just said to me, I don't know what all the fuss is about. I had all my babies at home. Auntie Lucy had all her babies at home, and Winnie down the road, who my mother was named after, just came down and caught those babies, and then she cleaned us up and cooked dinner for our husbands and our children. I mean, of course, the husbands wouldn't have quite cooked at that stage. But, she's just, I don't know. And I think I kind of love old ladies when they do that. Maybe I'll do that. Sometimes I have to hold myself back from doing that.
Yeah.
Because the old lady that...
Because like you said, we're actually being made into different people, and whether that's by our own choice or by culture and exposure to things in media. But you said you even saw it in your daughter, like the fear around birth coming in.
Well, she came home. She hadn't been really frightened because she was present when I had our youngest baby, who was a nice big, 10-pound, 4,000 something, whatever it was, grams. He had the cord tightly around his neck and he had to be, resuscitated a little bit. But nobody was frightened. She wasn't frightened. She just saw birth as, something mum does, is have a baby, and she wanted to be present. She was there. And then when she was expecting her own baby, she'd been visiting some people and somehow she came home anxious, when next time she visited me. She wasn't living with me. And she was quite anxious. And I just said, you know what? You come from a long line of easy birthing women. I'm not quite sure that's true, but perhaps for me and my grandmother, I think in between, my mother had a pretty rough time. But, I just said, you come from a long line of easy birthing women. Keep your mouth relaxed, your funny will relax, and that baby will come out. Loose lips, loose lips.
That's right. As above, so below.
Yes. Yeah, that's a nice way to say it. Yeah, but
it is. But I think that's just such a great example of, how the fear can creep in according to who we're around and the discourse of our time. And I think we are not aware of how much we're being conditioned towards a medicalised traumatic birth experience. And it comes into the same work that you do around how to parent and breastfeeding and sleeping and toddler taming, all these wonderful issues that you've kind of jumped into, which we said today we're going to have a no holds barred kind of conversation. That's the dogs in the background, by the way.
Nothing's off the table.
Nothing's off the table. No, that's right. That's right. So look.
But even with the breastfeeding, my daughter was asked at, I think it was a group of relatives of her then husband, and somebody said something about, are you going to breastfeed? And she just said, it's actually not a choice. And they said, but what if you can't? And I don't know, quick-witted girl says, well, if I can't, my mother will.
Wow, that's so cool.
Which I don't think she believed at all. But, I said, did they shut up? She said, oh, yeah, the room went silent. No more advice.
So cool. I love that. Oh, my goodness. I shouldn't say it, but, I'm so looking forward to being a grandma myself. And my son says he wants to have 5 kids, which I was saying, was my dream, but I managed 1. But, and you got the 5. But I just hope he does have the 5. And I'm like, yep, I'm living in the granny flat out the back. Gosh, imagine breastfeeding again if my daughter-in-law couldn't feed. I wouldn't mind. I've seen, double mummy families start to lactate. And yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing, right?
There's all sorts, yeah.
It is so good. Well, let's jump in. Let's jump into, I suppose we've covered a little bit because I love to know people's backgrounds. And I suppose you come from New Zealand. And what do you think kind of was important in your childhood? How were you raised? And how has that sort of formed a lot of how you see the world?
Okay, I have a mum who has a bipolar disorder, and there was a lot of She had a birth intervention. I was brought up a lot by my grandmother. And, you know, by 12 years old, I was doing my father's books because he was a truck driver and couldn't read or write very well. But he had his own business. And when my mum was well, she was right onto the business. But when she was unwell, it could be for months and months at a time. So, you know, I'd get the diary out at night and I'd write down what loads he'd done that day. And then on the weekend, I'd write his invoices. And I was actually still at primary school. So, and I had 2 younger siblings. So my sister was nearly 8 years younger. But something that really stuck in my head, I was about 13 or 14, too young to really understand about bonding and attachment. And my mother's line was, "You've never really felt like my child." And that's what sort of drives me to see, I just want mothers to have that connection with their children and that they don't need to be harsh with their kids. You know, my kids call me no rules nanny because I'm the grandmother that, you know, lets all the kids hop in my bed, do whatever they like, you know.
I love it.
More likely to have fun. And my dad was the fun person. You know, he was fun and spontaneous. But no, Mum tried very hard to do control. And she'd been a nurse. She'd been, you know, very career driven. And then suddenly I think to be at home with children, babies, no control, being a housewife, having psychosis after I was born, you know, all that sort of stuff that really I completely understand now. But as a 13, 14-year-old, I had no idea what she was talking about. And I think that really coloured a lot of what I do.
Totally.
But I don't want mothers to have that. And also so many mothers have regrets or they question about bonding, you know, for some reason they've had to express for their babies and, you know, they're sitting there expressing like crazy and the partner's feeding the baby and the mother feels bereft. And I said, I'm not going to make you do that. You know, you are going to breastfeed this baby. You're going to use the supply line. You are going to do skin to skin. You know, you don't have to do that because if your baby's latch and sucking is good, in some instances mothers do need to pump. But, you know, I'm not one for, I guess, making technology, really. I'd rather everything was as natural as possible. But I did grow up in the country and, you know, I delivered I caught a lamb on the way to school that was stuck, you know, things like that fairly close to the earth. And I think that gives me a trust in nature too.
That's beautiful. Wow, that's such a powerful story. So powerful and very moving about your mum as well. But of course, as a child, you don't understand those things, but you feel all those things and they create such a powerful imprint in your psyche. And Ria Dempsey, who's a common friend of ours, is down in Victoria. She talks about the wounded healer. And I think I'm very much that too. I'm very driven by my mum's birth experience when I was born and what I know about that. And my early parenting journey was influenced greatly by what she told or what I understood or what I felt. And I think, I don't know, we must be doing something right as wounded healers to be like doing the work we do. I think it somehow gives a very powerful transmission to our mums. But that's what I feel.
Oh, and I think we can bring in compassion.
Yeah.
You know, because that acceptance that all mums are different, but it's not going to hurt your child. Your child is going to be okay as long as you get that support that you need.
Yeah. And there isn't perfection in parenthood.
Oh, hell no.
Doing the best that they can. And I think that's a number one rule for sure.
I'm seeing a lot on social media about people who are going. There was a meme that actually I found quite offensive a little while ago, and people were saying, we are going to bring up the next generation, you know, and they'll have no hang-ups and they'll be perfect and all that. And I think you might be able to say that with very small children, but your kids are going to give you one hell of a shock as they're growing up, because part of the growing up is separating from you, testing out the rules. You know, my wonderful daughter, who's a psychologist now, came home at 15 with a tattoo of a dragon right up her calf, you know, things like that. I saw her sitting on the edge of the bath, washing her leg, and I thought she was putting a transfer on. And then I saw her grab a tube of Bepanthen, and I went, holy crap. And I just said to her, oh, sweetheart, you know what? There's some things we don't draw attention to. And she went, what? And I said, legs like yours and mine.
Oh, my God, you're hilarious.
And what was I going to do? I mean, my son came in, her big brother came in then and said, aren't you even going to go crooked? I said, what's the point? Most of my energy, it's done.
It's done.
One day she'll have a fabulous job and she'll either have to cover us up or she'll spend a lot of money getting that removed.
Classic. Well, so you've got 5 children across 3 decades. And I mean, did that teach you a lot about parenting and culture or the work that you do? What did you learn?
Well, I had my first one in the 70s. And if you listen to my TED Talk, I do talk a little bit about that, how I went to a class, I had him here at the Mercy in Melbourne, and I went to a class where Sister Mary Constance, nun with full bonnet, had a table behind her covered in bottles and formula and scoops and powder and Burko kettles. And she said, if you want to feed your baby with a bottle, you're going to have to learn about all this. I don't have time to teach you this tonight, so we're just going to talk about breastfeeding. They can teach you this in hospital. I was petrified. I did not remember a thing she said about breastfeeding, but I was utterly petrified that I would poison my child if I had to ever go and measure things and feed him with powder. Yeah. So, but he was admitted to NICU, and I had to express, and I was expressing about a teaspoonful at a time. It was all weird. And I've got older sister-in-laws who all did the 4-hourly feeding at that stage. They weren't breastfeeding, the 4-hourly feeding. And my mother-in-law said, one of them bathed her baby before the 6 a.m. feed. So it was 6, 10, 2 and 6, I think it was. And then I was given the talk before I left hospital that if your baby's waking up at 6 weeks at night, you give them a bottle of water, which now we know you would never give a baby a bottle of water. They could end up with very sick children because it messes up with the electrolytes in their system, and it can cause, brain injuries. But that was what they told me. And I just thought, why would I get up and sterilise a bottle and boil water when I've got milk in my boobs? It just seemed like the dumbest, it didn't make any sense to me. And also dragging them out to 4 hours, because everybody around was doing that, and I didn't know anyone that was breastfeeding after 3 months. There was a dentist's wife and a paediatric nurse, because we're in North Melbourne, who worked at the children's, and they stopped at 3 months. And it seemed that everybody did then. It was early 70s. That was considered a good start, and you need your body back. And you also, the other thing was, you needed to take care of your husband. And
this is all remnants of the 50s. I call this like the 1950s kind of Mad Men era, just carrying through, right?
Yeah, it was there in the early 70s. And then he was about 8 months old, and I went to a GP with a lump in my breast. Ooh. The GP pressed this lump and got fired in the eye with milk. I had a block duct. But there was a beautiful lady at the local fruit shop, Mrs. Goldstein, who'd been through a prisoner of war camp. And she was just delighted about this breastfed baby. And he'd be sitting up in the pram, and she'd peel him little pieces of apple or pieces of peach and chat away about this amazing baby and tell me the stories of how she had managed to save her daughter's life by breastfeeding through a concentration camp.
Wow.
And I just, went, you are amazing. So I had cheerleaders, she was just amazing, and I think it doesn't matter where it comes from, if someone's supporting you, that's really lovely. Yeah. And, and I'd been a nurse. I was a 21-year-old mother, and I'd done my nursing in New Zealand. And my biggest reason for breastfeeding, continuing on, was that I wanted boobs through the summer. Because he was an April baby.
You had some nice big boobs on the
Yeah, and I had nice big boobs for the first time in my life, and I was going to breastfeed right through summer so I could look okay in a bikini.
Oh my God, you're a classic.
How pathetic is that?
But, whatever, you were 21, right?
I was 21.
No one knew any better, and it is exciting having nice big boobs.
I knew my baby was healthy, and I knew, that, and I sort of felt, why would I stretch him out to 4 hours anyway? He's already hungry. I'm going to feed him now, and then we can go for a walk, and all the old drunks, homeless people in North Melbourne would hang off the pram and chat to the baby, and, it was just hilarious, doing this sort of thing. And then I had my second baby. Richie was about 8 months old, my first baby, when we went back to New Zealand. We lived there for about 5 years. And I went along to a La Leche League meeting to find out how to wean him, because by this time he was about 15 months old. And I realised it was such a beautiful, support group for women. Mm. And, William Sears was a young paediatrician and had just written his first book. And I know him now as a friend, but it's just amazing, all of these people that just took me under their wing as a young mum with 2 babies. And it just made such a difference to have that support for nurturing my babies very intuitively.
Yeah.
And so I didn't need to wean that child. He just weaned himself just somewhere during my pregnancy, had a go when I had the new baby, got a letdown and went, don't want that. So natural, my next kids all breastfed for several years until they really did naturally wean.
Yeah, beautiful. I love hearing all of that. And so then do you think you've seen the growling sound in the background is the dogs? Is it coming through?
Can't really hear them.
Oh, good. That's good. The 2 Dachshunds are fighting. They're playing and I can't distract them for some reason. I'm trying. Yes, it's all natural. Let's just say we're
normal and family and whatever.
Let's just keep it. The family's having its thing. So do you think there's been a difference? Obviously, you've been working in breastfeeding as a lactation consultant for how many years now?
About 42 years.
Wow.
Because I became a group leader with Latchia League when my second son was about a year old.
And can you explain what those, because a lot of people in Australia only know the Australian Breastfeeding Association. What's Latchia League? Where did that come from?
It's an international breastfeeding organisation. It started in the States in 1956, and they didn't just support breastfeeding. They actually had this 10 principles, I suppose. I nearly said 10 commandments, but 10 principles around mothering. And it was very supportive. Like, for instance, nutrition is a wide variety of foods in their natural state. So you would never get a packet of Tim Tams at a Latchia League morning tea.
Goodness for that. I can't stand going to the mothers groups and being given like sticky buns and oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was all whole foods, which was great. I mean, I've always had a veggie garden, except when we lived in an apartment at first, but when we went back to New Zealand, I always had a veggie garden, those sort of things. So it all just felt right. And things like discipline is loving guidance with respect to the capabilities of your child. And to me, that sounded really lovely because I'd been brought up with straps. And, my mother's classic. We found straps. My sister found straps when she was cleaning up. My sister was much younger than me and never, ever has been hit. But, I would get the straps. And as an adult, I've been diagnosed with ADHD. So accidentally, when I took my youngest child with dyslexia to the psychologist, and he made me fill out forms and then asked me all these questions and said, the mother has ADHD. And I went, no shit, Sherlock. Go to the top of the class.
Was strapped quite a few times, even though it could have just been diagnosed. That would have made life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, my teachers too.
Yeah.
My teachers too. I mean, it wasn't even a thing in those days. And my mother's classic was the teachers rang her up to come to a meeting at high school. She said, I'm not coming to any meetings. Do whatever you like, whether I've had a gut full of it too. So, which I laugh about now. I kind of go, and those teachers didn't even think poor neglected child. They just went, oh, right, we can't do anything with her. She might as well leave school.
Yeah.
So I think, to have, because when my first child became a toddler and was, doing things like reaching for PowerPoints or whatever, and it was a pretty gentle sort of a child, I just didn't know what to do. I had nothing in my toolbox. So it was lovely to have those resources. And I actually went to the university there and did, they had you didn't have to do a degree, but there was some course about early childhood that I went and did just so that I'd understand my child a bit better.
A course about early childhood at university?
Yeah, but it wasn't a degree. It was just an extension course that they did.
Yeah, wow.
Which was really lovely. Yeah, it was in Hamilton in New Zealand. It was really lovely that I got that extra, because the first time, the only time my child was hit was he reached for something on a neighbour's coffee table and this woman slapped his hand, and I went home. Wow. My husband said, oh shit, what do we do? I can't go over there for a cuppa. So I sort of made this promise to myself, I'd never hit my children.
Yeah.
I'd be a bloody liar if I said I'd never hit them.
I'd be lying if I said I hadn't hit Leroy a few times, I can tell you. There was
but it was sort of never a toddler, but my son, one of my sons was about 12 and he was watching the boxing and getting closer and closer to the TV. And I went across, turned it off, put my hand on his shoulder and said, look, mate, time to chill. And he leaned forward and turned the TV on, and I hit him across the shoulder and said, leave that bloody thing off. I hate violence. He just and he laughed. He was about 12 and he just burst out laughing. And then I went, oh, yes. It's a bit like isn't it? I know my kids were quick. They were very quick on that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's the smart one. It's so good. I love it. I love it. So what would you say in general would be your parenting philosophy to those who've never read your books or heard the TED Talk? What would you explain to them?
I think being kind and listening, and to me, I always think of the child as doing the best they can right now. You know, whether that's a baby or a toddler or a teenager, that, you know, they are doing the best that they can rather than, you know, and I think punishment's useless. I think we need to work together to come up with, you know, and so I think guiding them gently would be my philosophy on the whole, you know, disciplined child rearing, you know, but connecting with your child, because if you've got good connections, it doesn't matter, you know, and we're building those with our little babies and our toddlers, those strong connections, and they are going to, you know, I think roots and wings, I guess, would be the
I like that.
You know, roots, strong, deep roots of connection, and then letting them go when they're ready to let go, because, and letting them do anything that they think they're capable of within reason. I mean, with my teenagers, it'd be, is it morally safe? Is it, you know, is it life-threatening or is it morally threatening? Yeah. It's something we should not be doing. But they will probably experiment with all sorts of things too. One of my kids went off to Africa at 21 and, you know, got a job as a travel leader and got shipped out with typhoid and malaria. You know, he's a beautiful man. He was my wildest toddler, I suppose, other than the youngest one. But he was very full-on, very strong-willed, very active physically, didn't sleep all night till he was over 4. And he's rung me a couple of weeks ago, what are you doing, blah, blah, and he's taking me to Paris.
Oh, I love him.
That's all that. Just met him.
Oh, that's so cute. So how old is he now?
43.
Oh, my.
Wait a while.
Yeah,
he's
because
got 2 kids.
We can't even go. I love it. Because I just spent this morning setting up what we have at She Births, a Soul Mama Circle. So like a cross between a women's group and a mother's group, sort of women's circle, mother's group, where we don't just talk about sleep and poo and our babies, and we certainly don't give advice or judge. We just sit in this space of holding circle for all of us to go through our journey. And we talk about our identity, and we talk about relationships and self-care and the matrescence process. And yeah, I cried when I was having in the circle because my son's on the verge of leaving home, and it's the biggest grief. Yeah, it's the biggest grief I've ever experienced in my life.
And you feel that umbilical cord just stretching, don't you? 2 of my kids have gone overseas at 21. You know, he just, one went to do the snow season in Canada, but she was the fourth child by then. So I wasn't so, you know, but when this kid decided to just go off to Africa and work as a travel leader, you know, he'd been for a trip and then came back and said, you know, I'm going to get a job with them, organise this, got a one-way ticket. Mum, can you sell my car so that I've got some more money?
Wow.
And wild as, you know, and he'd just go, and he'd ring me from things like, he rang me one day from Namibia and, you know, there was a phone on a pole and he said, can you ring me back? I ring back and an African man says, hello? And I said, hello, it's Jonathan's mum here. Can you see him? He's a tall white man with fair hair. Seen him? I said, can you see him now? No, I don't see him anymore. And then the next day, I opened the Age and martial law in Namibia.
Oh, my God.
And I went, oh, boy. And, you know, that umbilical cord just stretches. About 2 weeks later, I get a call from Nairobi or somewhere like that. And he says, I said, how did you get out? Oh, you get $20 out before they get their guns out. You're right.
Wow.
And then the Tutsis and the Hutus were, you know, they had their war when he was being a travel leader. And my mum in New Zealand said something. I said, oh, there's been, you know, some truck with tourists going to, because he always wanted, I homeschooled him and he always wanted to see the gorillas in the mist. So he was going there with a group of tourists, and he was the travel leader. And there was a truck in front of them where the driver was shot. And Mum and hostages were taken. And my mother said, oh, that was on our news this morning because the driver was a New Zealander. I went, oh, Jonathan's got a New Zealand passport because that's where he was born. And I just went, oh, I thought she'd lost the plot, but she definitely hadn't. So, you know, all these adventures that this kid had. And it's hard when they leave and you sort of just want to know that they're safe. And you also have these feelings like, have I done enough? Do you have those? It's hard.
I feel like, have I been present enough
Yes.
in the good times? Have I really got it in my soul, in my heart, in my mind, in my memory? Have I got it? Is it enough to take us forward? And it's funny because when people ask me, you know, what would you change looking back on your parenting? I wouldn't change anything other than taking more photos and videos, just because like I don't trust that I can remember it all the good times. Yeah. And I would say probably more holidays. Like I feel like our most precious connected times and sacred were, you know, holidays away from particularly the Western world, in third world places as well. So they were so special.
That. Yeah, we didn't manage that because we didn't have enough money, you know.
No, you had 5,
You had to do the holidays, you know, like, and if you had to journey back to New Zealand to see family, which you did, I mean, that was all your money gone.
All the money gone, that's right.
It was really hard. So, you know, but I think the kids don't need big things.
No, they don't.
They can have memories out of the funniest little things. Like my kids have one of jumping off the shed roof onto mattresses, you know, and just normal stuff.
It's so good. I love it. Especially when you've got siblings to have fun with as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, but even the neighbours' kids, you know, other kids, they'd all muck in together anyway because I've got quite big age gaps. You know, the first 2 were very close. Then I had, a 4.5-year gap. Then a 3-year gap, then an 8-year gap. So,
wow,
you know, quite big gaps. But it's interesting that, you know, they all connect up and they're all friends with each other, and you know, which is nice, I think, because they
awesome.
are all very different personalities.
Of course. Someone asked me, you know, is it worth it? Like, what's this payoff of being like a conscious or responsive and available parent? And I suppose you and I are kind of sharing those stories now. It's the quality of relationships that you have and that love, right, that continues on, even though the pain is terrible in letting them go. What would you say is the payoff of being a more available?
And also through those teenage years, I think that's when it shows up big for you. You know, my youngest one, who was probably the one sent to teach me the most, and he rang up at about 17, you know, he'd been at a friend's place and they'd all been drinking and it was midnight and can you come and pick us up? And I was in my pyjamas and I got breathalyzed on the way in my pyjamas, and I'm, you know, looking dishevelled with pink hair isn't really a good look when you get pulled over to blow into the whistle. And I said, look, I haven't been drinking, but the kids I'm picking up are, because I said to him, look, tell everybody else to stay there and I'll drive them all home. I don't want anyone getting in the car. No, and they waited, and, you know, I bought them kebabs on the way home because I thought, well, thank God they've actually done that. But I said to the cops, can I bring them to you? I'm picking up kids. Can I bring them to you and you tell me how much they've had to drink? They weren't there when I was on the way back. I don't know where they'd gone, but, you know, it was
that's classic.
Past them. But, you know, those sort of things that kids will come to you if there's a tough time, if they're dealing with something, it might be a relationship breakup, whatever. And I think that's, you know, that's the important part.
Yeah, that they feel safe. And I think that safe to share. And I don't think it's ever going to be 100%. Like we're at that point now with my son just turning 17, and it's only, I would say, in the last 3 months that he's actually not sharing everything.
Oh no, they don't share everything.
No.
If they're in strife, they'll come to, they know that they can come back to you.
They know that you can come. They can come. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the depth of love is profound. And like you said, you know, your youngest one was there to be your greatest teacher. That's our philosophy, you know, in She Births and in Buddhism and in yoga, in the Vedic scripts, it's about the child being our teacher. being our
I think
guru.
they've all taught me lots, but, you know, this one I sort of think, I'm thinking, you know, you've got older kids and you've gone through it and you think, holy crap, what are you doing this for? Haven't you learned from them? You know, but they've each got their own journey.
Yeah.
And different things, like one of mine, I think he got into accounting or something like that, but he, you know, went off to uni for about 3 or 4 days and then came home in the morning and said he'd missed the bus. And I went, you haven't, have you? And he went, you know what, Mum? I don't even want to do this. They're all wankers and they all stay inside and I don't want to wear a suit and work inside.
I love him.
Okay. And he was the one that ended up going off to Africa. I said, all right, so what are you going to do? And my husband, who'd done an MBA as an adult, saying, you know, mate, you've got this opportunity. He says, Dad, are you happy? And my husband couldn't even answer that because he was so full of responsibility and, you know, study and work and all that sort of thing. And at that period of time, I don't think he could even think about being happy. You know, it would have been almost, and he's not that kind of person. Like, he's very serious kind of person, whereas I'm more the spontaneous kind of person. And so, you know, anyway, this kid ended up, he was the one that went to Africa, came back with his typhoid and malaria, healed from that, went to work in hospitality and decided that he'd want to learn about fish. So he went to work for a fish place, wholesaler, and they paid him all his cash and overtime. So he worked 6 days a week, or his overtime in cash, 6 days a week, went to the stock exchange and learned how to invest money, bought himself an investment apartment, and then he ended up going off and learning landscaping. He now has a massive landscaping business with over 25 employees, and he sponsors refugees. So he's, you know, got a good heart, but he's done something completely different that he never needed to go to university for.
Oh, my God. I just needed to hear that story as well.
His son doesn't want to go to university, does he?
He oscillates. Like, I think he could easily be, someone who never, like, if I don't kick him in, like, after a gap year, I reckon he could easily be someone that doesn't, for sure. And that's, it's okay too. It feels more scary, you know, as a parent coming from
the process, isn't it?
Yeah, from a family of educators and doctors. And I mean, I didn't enjoy most of my university, but I still want Leroy to have a great, I think it's a real privilege to have those years where you're not thrown out into the world having to make money and fend for yourself. But, you know, I think if it's not right for him, it's not right for him.
Support him. Yeah, but that's really hard. And I've talked to a few people that I know who are, you know, educated psychologists or whatever, and you would probably know them too if I mentioned their names, but I mean, it's their story, that have, you know, been really worried about these kids who've gone off travelling for 3, 4, 5 years and their mates are all finishing university and these kids are still travelling the world. And, you know, Sarah did that too, my fourth one. You know, she just travelled the world and came back, got a job with Flight Centre, ended up managing a flight centre at 24 and, you know, just completely fits that corporate thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's so good. I mean, I know there's probably lots of families listening to this, mums in particular, you know, who've got little ones in their arms, but it's not that far away. All these things we're talking about, you know, you just look into the future 16 summers. That's really all you have with your kids at home.
It's not many.
It's not many in the whole thing. And then you're in this wild world where they're in the wild world and it's a whole different game. But I suppose we should backtrack and let's maybe talk a little bit, your 3 sort of topics that you talk about the most, I suppose, are breastfeeding and sleeping. Would you say in toddler training? Is that part of the sort of your sort of those sort of, and you're also very big into nutrition and also a baby massage consultant, right? So
I trained as a massage instructor. I actually had a Sikh woman who taught me to massage my babies. And then years later I had the opportunity to do infant massage instructor training and I went, I will do that.
That's so great. I love being in India and seeing the mums massage their kids along their legs. They sit there with their legs straight out and they just like run their hands down their kids' legs and arms and it's quite efficient.
Quite vigorous.
Yeah, vigorous. It's not like a gentle little strokey tickles or anything like that. It's strong. It's bringing them into the body and balancing the doshas. It's a powerful thing. But hey, how about we start talking about breastfeeding? Because it's still, I just don't understand why it still keeps coming up into the press. For me, it's just like the most normal, natural thing. Why wouldn't we do it in public? Why wouldn't you feed for a few years? I don't get it. But is it still an issue, do you think, in Australia?
Look, it's really weird because there'll be times when women will say, you know, I've had no problems. There'll be lots of women that say I'll have no problems. But a little while ago, I put something up on Facebook just a few weeks ago, and I had over 400 responses. Some of the mums were being supportive, but there were things like a mum in a change room and she was watching her toddler as she was breastfeeding her baby, and another woman marched in and pulled the curtain shut and said, my husband's coming in. He doesn't want to see that. You know, there are some really awful things going on.
That's so weird.
Where mothers are, you know, shamed and you go, what is wrong? And I guess every time that hits the press, there will be a new mum sitting at home thinking, I can't go out because I couldn't face that criticism. So we've actually got a hashtag we've started on the Booby Bickies Instagram page, and it's hashtag where are you feeding today without a question mark. And we've got 4,000 mums have taken photos of themselves in all sorts of places. You know, there's a farmer sitting on a horse, and that got a bit of flack because her husband was actually holding the bridle, but that wasn't shown in the photo. But he just passed the baby up to her to give it a feed so she could then carry on doing whatever she was doing. There's someone sitting in the back of a wheat harvester. There's mums at the hairdressers. There's mums in so many places. And that's how it should be, that women can just breastfeed. It's natural. It's, you know, once you get breastfeeding going, that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. So what's the hashtag?
Hashtag where are you feeding today?
Where are you feeding today without a question mark? I love it. I love it. Now, getting started, and there's so many issues. And like you said, support, encouragement, those are, I think, really important elements that we need to initiate breastfeeding and get into good habits and patterns and so on. But a lot of mums these days, I suppose, they tend to, not find that support, or they seem to stop earlier than they thought they would. Or are you seeing that as well? Are you helping people establish? Are you helping people continue? What's the sort of role that you...
Both. I think the thing is that I always say to the pregnant women, learn the stop sign, because you're going to be in hospital and somebody's going to, you know, and it's about efficiency. You know, there's not enough staff, so someone's going to come in. If you have a hospital bed, they're going to come and grab you by the boob and shove this baby on, and you're going to go, you know, what? So
you
just
won't be able to speak.
Right up and say, please, I'd like to try myself, because babies know how to do this.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, sometimes women are so out of it after a birth because they've had so much intervention that they actually do need someone to help them get that baby going, which is really sad. And the babies take a while too, because they've been quite medicated. But I think, you know, it sort of stems from this fear around birth, and then all the people saying to them, like they did to my daughter, but what if you can't breastfeed, which sows the seeds in that mind about what if I can't.
Yeah.
And, you know, there will be some women with some medical issues. They might have retained placenta. They might have PCOS. They might have diabetes. Some of these things that can make breastfeeding in the beginning quite challenging. But, you know, just one of my clients, who's actually a doctor but had a dreadful experience with her first baby, had breast hyperplasia. And that's, you know, very small breasts, widely spaced, which I've got anyway, but no, these are different shaped breasts. They're quite tubular, often one's bigger than the other, you know, and it's very limited ductal tissue in these particular breasts. It's not a common thing. But we discussed, and we had plans, and we had backup plans, and this mother spent 2 weeks doing skin to skin. She got donor milk ready, because I said, I'm happy to do a call out if I'm happy to take responsibility for the screening. She had donor milk and donors ready to go. She had a supply line and supplemented her baby with donor milk. And then by about 6 months, she didn't use the supply line at night time, the little nursing supplementer. which is a little tube. You wear the bottle around your neck, put the little tube next to your boob, and the baby sucks that supplement. So they're not getting used to a bottle sucking.
It's like this thin little piece of plastic that comes through. Yeah.
And the milk comes through. So they're sucking at the nipple, but they're getting milk from you and from the other. So the mother's still getting stimulation of her breasts. And then by about 6 months, this mother stopped using the supply line at night and just breastfed overnight. And by about 8 months, she visited me and her baby's going, ready for a boob. Yeah. Her baby had never had a bottle. And then, the baby's nearly 2. And she texted me and said, how do I stop it grabbing my boob out of my shirt wherever we are? So she had a fully breastfed baby.
Amazing. Amazing.
I think some of these things can be, people aren't, perhaps they're not reaching out for support, and there are lots of people calling themselves lactation nurses or breastfeeding consultants, and they actually aren't. The IBCLC is the International Board Certified qualification, which is the gold standard, and we have to do so much background work, which most of the time you don't really need for an average breastfeeding mother. But if there's a complication, it's really good to know this, the physiology and have techniques to help mothers. How are you going to help that baby who isn't sucking well or, can't manage? Because every baby and every mum are different. Mums have different sized boobs. They've had different experiences seeing other people. And I think a lot of people have that first baby and they prepare really, really well for birth, but they often don't think beyond that.
Yeah, yeah. We spend a lot of time focusing on that first feed and that baby-led attachment and that crawl, because I know it really sets up a great feed and encouraging to feed as much as the baby desires, going forward, particularly in those first while. It's so important.
Well, there's books out there, there's advice out there to give babies bottles of formula. I mean, there are health professionals talking about giving babies formula at bedtime, and you go, well, that's not going to help your breast milk and it's not going to help your baby, and they're doing it from birth. And you go, the studies show that if you breastfeed at that feed, your baby's getting night milk, which is rich in melatonin, you're going to get more sleep.
Yeah, amazing.
And the baby's microbiome is going to be healthy too.
Exactly. There are a lot of questions in our community at the moment about weaning. And so I thought I might just talk about that for a little bit. So can I jump into how do you wean a toddler? Yeah, night weaning toddlers. Katie says, Stephanie's like, how to comfort while co-sleeping, and can you night wean a 2-year-old while you're giving that comfort? How do you wean a baby that's allergic to cow's milk? How do you wean a baby that's never taken a bottle? Goodness me, can you jump into
young enough in that first year? I would say don't do the night weaning. They may still need those night feeds through the first year. And there are so many reasons for that, because your baby becomes mobile, your baby is starting to get teeth, so it's burning more calories, it might need a night feed. The night milk is very rich in tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin. So you're developing serotonin receptors in the baby's gut. And this is helping do that. And the research shows that not just the tryptophan in the breast milk that converts to serotonin, but it helps develop, it's got other components that help develop those serotonin receptors, which are really important for us throughout life. If you have depression or anxiety, people give you serotonin or they tell you to get more from various sources. So, this is important to set your baby up. I know when babies feed a lot at night, it can be really hard, and we can look at what perhaps is waking this baby, is what I'd say. Look at what's going on for this baby. Are they getting molars? Are they really badly teething? A teething baby can have their head elevated a bit in the cot or in the bed, or co-sleeping, sleep them on your arm, so that there's less pressure around the head and jaw area. It can be a food sensitivity, chemicals like salicylates, which are very high in things like berries, grapes, tomatoes, citrus. They can accumulate over the day. and they can take about 48 hours to get out of your baby's system, and they can impact the baby's nervous system, making them more wakeful.
Agitated and wakeful.
And wakeful. And it's dose-related. It's not an actual allergy. It just means, cut right back, eliminate for about a week, 5 days, go on a low salicylate diet, and then gradually introduce some things back in and see where your tipping point is for your child and their age. But I'd say if you're making any changes with a baby, with a toddler, gradually with love is the mantra.
Yeah.
Just take it slowly. Where would you like to be, and how can you cut those things back? If you want them to go into their own bed at night, maybe start with a mattress on the floor, settle them there and go back to your own bed. And then, gradually they will start to sleep longer, and particularly without the boob in their face, they tend to. And if you've got a 2-year-old, you can start talking to them. There's that beautiful book, Nurses When the Sun Shines, by a couple of Canadian mums that they might like to read to their child. Their child might tell them they don't like that story because it's about little girls having cuddles overnight instead of having booby. And my daughter, you've got a parcel. Can I open it up? And I said, I can remember you saying this to me. You can have booby when the sun shines. But you can't have it now. You can have it.
I love that. I didn't know about that book. It sounds fantastic. Tell us the name of it again, because it started to go a bit funny.
Nurses When the Sun Shines.
Nurses When the Sun Shines.
Yeah, because it's Canadian, and they don't necessarily say boobies, they say nurses.
Nurses.
An American woman, I heard the other day, an American woman, was offered, she visited a friend in Australia with a baby, and she said, would you like to nurse my baby? She declined because she thought it meant breastfeed.
Breastfeed. Oh my God. I love that. I love it. So basically, with gentleness and grace.
You can do with a child. Yeah, but with a child who's sort of closer to 2, you might be able to play games with them and teach them full and empty. And then for that first wake up at night, even if if they're sleeping with you can still do this and say, boobies empty, just have a cuddle.
Yeah.
Until they fill up, and boobies will get full again.
Yeah.
And they might get a little bit, pooped off with you, but over a period of a few days, boobies are empty, and you do have to offer, later on, next time they wake up, you do have to offer the boob so that they trust you. And then you can gradually stretch it to, the second time they wake up.
Oh, God,
and that's quite a gentle.
I totally wish I'd known all these little things when I was weaning Leroy. That nurses in the daytime and full and empty and little games and dialogue about all of that. That just would have been so, so helpful.
Yeah, but we learn with each kid. We learn things as they grow, don't we? And then we can, share it with other women.
Absolutely. Beautiful mum of ours, Anwen, would also love to hear your take on if and when to try and introduce pumping and bottles, especially this idea now that we have around dads doing the overnight feeds. So often she says she sees this expectation without an understanding of milk supply being highest and risk of bottle preferences. Is there any place for bottles and pumping and dads doing night feeds?
Dads can do baby massage. They can bath or shower with the baby. They can lie with the baby skin to skin and watch the rugby if they want to. There's so many ways dads can bond without having to impact that breastfeeding relationship. And the night feeds, if you do want to pump and you do want to give your partner a bottle and go to bed at 9 or 10, you still have to express then so that your baby gets that night milk. Because in the beginning, when your baby's learning to breastfeed, the sucking action from a bottle is actually different from sucking at the breast. So you really need your baby to be very effectively breastfeeding before you start pumping and offering bottles, and understanding that day milk and night milk are different. I know, you do you, if that's what you want to do. But remember, you do need to pump in the evening, give your baby evening milk if dad's going to do it. Maybe you do it the night before and dad uses that milk in the evening. But I still see that it's more work for that mother that she's going to pump. Maybe dad gives a bottle at 9 o'clock while she's off having her shower and getting ready for bed. But I think if you just breastfeed, give your baby to your partner to settle, that works really nicely. It's not so much bonding with the bottle. It's just bonding with the baby. And that's better, because if you're not pumping at that time, you're not emptying your breasts, your body's going to get the feedback inhibitor of lactation, which is a hormone that comes as your breasts fill, and they're going to get that message that you don't need to make milk. So your supply is going to go down. And overnight, particularly with a young baby, overnight, your prolactin levels, which are your milk-making hormones, they're the highest. So breastfeeding overnight is going to really help your supply. You know, if your baby naturally sleeps longer at night, that's fine. They've probably had an evening feed, they've got their tryptophan, they've got their melatonin, because babies don't produce their own melatonin for about 4 months anyway. So they've had all that evening milk, which is great. And if they choose to sleep longer, as long as your breast milk supply is good, you can go with it.
So good. I have watched some of my mums over the years go through the weaning process, or putting their babies into their cots, and go through, I think it's quite a period of depression and heaviness. And I think what they're missing is the oxytocin and the prolactin. It's such a dramatic hormone change. Potentially, I think women need to be aware of that as well, don't you think? Or
that chemistry is it's so fragile, isn't it? It can really, you know, and just sitting, holding and cuddling a baby, you've got oxytocin, which is helping with that anxiety. So, you know, you hear all those voices about babies needing to self-settle. They don't need to. You know, if we snuggle up to a partner and we're all relaxed, you know, nobody pokes you and says, get over your own side of the bed. We shouldn't be cuddling. We're creating bad habits. You know, it's just not done. But we expect this incredible stuff from very young babies. And babies, when they're first born, they enter sleep through an active sleep phase. You know, it takes their little bodies time to get into a deeper sleep anyway. So, and you know what? You're not going to get cuddles for much longer. They're going to be crawling and wriggling and not snuggling in like that in somewhere in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Precious. Yeah. But that chemistry, I really agree with you, that chemistry is, you know, you're very vulnerable when you've just had a baby, and really to be able to just chill and cuddle. I say Netflix and chill, and I have my little 13-year-old grandson say, Nanny, you have no idea what that means.
Netflix and chill. Bibby Bickies and Bibby chill.
Yeah. Fill a basket with stuff. You know, you've got your snacks there. There might be booby bickies, there might be some fruit and a bottle of water and perhaps a couple of nappies and some breast pads, whatever you're going to need, and just cart that basket with you, whether it's sitting out in the sunshine or whether it's on the veranda or whether it's on your bed or whether it's, you know, watching TV. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And just sit there and chill. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. So sleep being the other big hot topic. Han Perkins is asking us, we'd love to hear any tips you have for safe bed sharing.
Okay. So there is a thing called the Safe Sleep 7, which I actually mentioned, I've got a book, Sleeping Like a Baby, so I've mentioned that in there because it was created by Diana West and co, who wrote Sweet Sleep, published by La Leche League. And obviously no smoking. You know, if you're a smoker, baby needs to be separate from you. And smoking during pregnancy, there's now research around that can inhibit the baby's development of their arousal response. So smoking, you know, a smoke-free environment, pregnancy, and that you're sober and that your partner's sober. Because if you're on any medication or you've had any alcohol, and that's why I get so upset about all these wine memes, you know, that I think they've gone overboard. Because if you're a new mother, you know, okay, if you want to have an occasional drink, but it's getting really silly that mummy needs wine. And if mummy needs it, maybe she needs some support and some counselling and some help. Yeah. But, you know, that you are sober, and otherwise you're not aware of your baby.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been drinking, you go into a deeper sleep, that baby's on their back. And if you're lying with your baby, maybe I could stand up a bit, and you've got that baby in the crook of your arm, you're on your side, your knees will be bent if you're breastfeeding. That's the breastfeeding mother's position. The baby is honed in on the breast. You're not going to roll over your outstretched arm. They're not going to slide down below your knees. So you've got that cuddle curl. And if you watch a cat feeding their kittens, if you watch any mammal, that's the position they get into. So that cuddle curl, that the baby's lightly dressed. You wouldn't have a sleeping bag on if they're in your bed. You want them uncovered. You want their head uncovered. And you want your bed to be fairly firm. If it's too soft, the baby can get down into crevices. Watch out for cords and gaps and things like that too.
I love it.
Creating a safe space for your bed, and that if you've got a partner in the bed with you, that you're both taking responsibility, because it's no good just one person saying, it's fine, I'm sober, you both need to be sober and aware of the baby.
Yeah, I really hope that people, I think for a long time, well over probably 10 plus years, there's been a big period of time now where women have been very afraid to co-sleep, and it's been a bit like, oh my God, you're having a home birth, oh my God, you're a co-sleeper. Like they're shunned almost. But it's great to hear about these principles, and it's great to also, for people who are listening, to listen to Dr. Howard Chilton's podcast, who also talks about his work and James McKenna's work in showing that sharing a bed can be safe when certain factors are considered.
If you've got it safe. Yeah, James McKenna's wonderful, and so is Howard Chilton. It's something we've done forever, but I think if we don't talk about it, parents don't know how to do it safely, and they're more likely to do it when they're absolutely exhausted and about to hit a deep sleep. They might have even had a drink, or they might have taken some medication, and then it's not safe. No. So you do it as a last resort because you just think, oh, bugger it, I'm going to take that baby and fall asleep in bed with it. And, which is what I did with my first baby. I didn't kill him, but, I just had got up and down and up and down and up and down. And I was told by my relatives that I would kill him because he was slept in our bed. But, I got up and down, up and down. I actually handed him to my partner. My husband put him on his chest.
Yeah.
As the sun was coming in, the baby wasn't in his cot. I'm throwing off the blankets to see where this baby is. And I turned around, still sound asleep on my husband's chest, skin to skin, which was really beautiful.
Leroy spent many a night sleeping there on his daddy's chest. I remember it. It was so beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
So as long as we keep the safe environment and we're really careful about that, the risks aren't. And by 4 months, the risks between cot and co-sleeping are no different. That's really...
That's great. That's great to know, the little bubbers.
Little bubbers. And if you've had a prem baby or something like that, be a bit more careful. Bed sharing's the best. It's so snuggly and delicious. And Simone's asking, should your baby tell you their sleep routine, or should you direct them into sleep times as they get older? And if so, what age do we start sleep training? She said she doesn't like the term, but that's what gets used. What do you reckon? Yeah. I think we can just follow the baby's leads right up. I suppose it depends. If you have to go to work in the morning and your baby's up till midnight, maybe try, snuggling down and turning the lights low earlier at night and gradually move that back. I had one child who only needed 8 hours and needed 24 at 6 months. So I kind of gradually moved it so that about 11 o'clock at night he would fall asleep till about 7 in the morning, and he woke up a couple of times in there for a feed anyway, but, at 6 months, because that kid, his older brother was having an afternoon nap, and I would snuggle him down with the curtains drawn and the room dark and put him on the boob pretending it was night time, but he wasn't having that. He'd have the boob and then he'd be up, ready to crawl again. And he was very active and, 95th percentile for weight and height and everything, because I had people telling me if he doesn't sleep, he won't grow. Well, he's a 3 tall man now. But, he's just one of those kids who didn't need a lot of sleep. And there are genetic factors around that now. There've been some studies showing that, if you're a person or your partner's a person that's high energy, doesn't need a lot of sleep, chances are you have a child like that. So you can't really force them into sleep, but you can, and by the time they're toddlers, you can create a gentle rhythm to your day.
Yeah. Got it.
They might not be in bed by 6 or 7 at night. There's no rules about that, but you can move them towards it, and then there'll be tricky times as they drop sleeps. As they drop their naps, there'll be times where they might need one day, so they'll be up late that night.
Exactly.
It's being flexible, but if you want to try and nudge it a bit to
adapt it to the family.
Adapt to the family, that can be fine.
Yeah. And what about tips or tricks for an easy transition from the co-sleep to the cot you've already talked about, but what about from a cot to a big bed? Sarah's asking.
Right. You can start, I think if you're making any of these changes, again, they're gradually with love things. So you could start the daytime bed, the bed in the daytime nap. You know, if your toddler's having a daytime nap, if they're happy in the cot and they haven't started to climb out, you can leave them in the cot as long as it works for you. But if you want to transition them out, you know, starting with the daytime nap, and you may have to lie down with them. And often buying, you know, getting them a quilt cover, a doona cover that they, with a character on it that they like, or a colour that they like, something like that. I know, watched my daughter do it with her son, and he was actually in their bed. They'd taken the bed off the legs. You know, it was down on the
on the
floor, and he was about 17 months, and he was talking really early. And she just said, I'm jack of him climbing all over me in the night. And so he had his own room, and she had a mattress on the floor, bought a lamb's wool underlay, put a sheet on, gave him a pillow because he was quite safe in the daytime. And there was a quilt cover with a dragon on that he really liked. And he just straight up went my bed, own bed, new bed, because she was going to do that over a period of a couple of weeks. But he wanted to go back in there at night time. So she put him in there thinking, oh, well, I'll still be waking up. He slept till 5 a.m.
Amazing. And that's what...
third time in his whole life.
I love it. And every family does it differently. And I think that's what's so tricky. There isn't a blanket rule for every family. It's about you and the child. And I love how creativity comes into this whole process. And
I've seen amazing beds, like, you know, queen size beds side by side, mattresses on the floor and a whole sleep room. It's whatever works in your family, really.
And speaking of that big bed thing, I was just going to say, I have some beautiful friends in Byron, and they who I douulaed for, and they just had made, so if anybody wants it, they just have to go to 40 Winks, who are now the experts. They have a double king mattress for the 4 of them plus the 2 dogs, and it's all working incredibly well. Like the full bed head's been made, the full mattress, the quilt, everything. It's so cool.
So that's 40 Winks.
Yeah, 40 Winks did that for them. It was really cool. Amazing. And the woman, it was so funny when the mum, my friend, rang them and said, this is what I'd really like. And the woman said, you know what? That's what I would have loved like 40 years ago, and I'm going to help you do it. So she got to like live her dream through helping them. It was really beautiful.
Beautiful. Because a double king, the whole family's set for ages.
Set forever. And see, that's it. It's people say in my last course, I don't get asked very often, but how long is it okay for the child to sleep in the bed, or how long until, when should you get them out of the bed because they could stay in there forever? And I'm like, I don't what would you say to that?
Well, I used to write for a magazine in Asia, and they'd send me copies of this magazine, and there was an article about co-sleeping. I hadn't written it, and they'd interviewed a psychiatrist from the Philippines, and they asked her that question, and she said, by adolescents, because adolescents need privacy. So that is not what we'd hear over here.
Adolescents definitely need privacy.
Adolescents need privacy, and chances are, they won't still be snuggling up to you.
No, they won't. They won't. They'll do it earlier than adolescents.
Families go camping and they all sleep in the same tent. So co-sleeping.
Like a yurt, like a Mongolian ger, right? And I love that film Babies. Have you seen that film Babies?
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to see how everyone's co-sleeping and the feeding and that creativity again around, making dummies out of fat with a matchstick. Like, it's just amazing what everyone's doing around the world.
My daughter went, Sarah went travelling in Mongolia, another adventurer. And the custom there was to just yell out at the ger, and their custom is to take in travellers. And so, she would sleep with this whole family, and she brought back a photo of a child, or lots of photos, but one of them was a child. She said, guess how old this kid is? I said, I don't know, he looks about 3. She said, the granddad with no teeth told me he was 1.5. But she said, all I ever saw him eat was a big leg of sheep and boob.
Love it. It's great. It's amazing. We actually grow on love, really. It doesn't really matter what else goes in otherwise sometimes. So I think that's our sleep questions. But do you ever sort of help mums with their postnatal depletion? We're big fans of Dr. Oscar Soralik, and he's going to join our podcast
I've interviewed
as well.
him. He's great. Yes.
He's amazing.
It makes perfect sense that,
Yeah.
you know, our bodies, we grow a baby, we birth a baby, we feed a baby, and our babies get first dibs on that nutrition. And particularly things like your omega-3, you know, because breast milk's really rich in this. It's really important for the baby's brain development. And, you know, that mothers get this in their food, whether it's fish or whether it's flaxseed or whatever it is, that they can. And I'm a big believer in the food before the supplements, you know, that you really need the food. And with our Booby Bickies, obviously they have flaxseed in, but we've got a new brekkie, and we've complied with food labelling laws, so we can actually say it's rich in omega-3. So it's got good stuff in it for, you know, new mums to nourish those mothers. And I think it's, you know, if you can get it from food, and we neglect ourselves. You know, it's the old burnt chop syndrome, isn't it? That mothers are so busy looking after their children and their babies and their house and whatever other responsibilities they've got, whether they're going to work or whatever, that they push it, and we push our bodies too hard. Yeah,
totally. So do you think it's, you know, when a woman is really, really depleted, what would you say, like, could she continue breastfeeding or should she wean? Have you ever seen those sorts of scenarios?
I have, and then I would refer that mother on to someone like Dr. Soralik, you know, an integrative medicine specialist who would do that, who would help them get back up again. Because they can still continue to breastfeed. I mean, it's their body stores that are depleted. The baby's getting first dibs, so they need to, you know, up those body stores. But I have seen them, you know, really foggy-brained, and, you know, she's saying to her partner, can you take notes? Because she can't even follow a conversation. And then and I always say to mother, what did you eat for breakfast? What did you have for lunch? What have you eaten today? Not just, are you eating well? You know, it's always think about what you've actually eaten. And so often it might have been a piece of toast, it might have been a cup of coffee. Often it's not much, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon, and you think your body can't do this. You really need to, you know, do something. And, you know, if the mother wants to wean, that's her prerogative. But if she can do something, and also getting your iron levels and your thyroid levels checked, because iron and B12 too, but iron and thyroid in particular can have those symptoms of, you know, depression, anxiety. I have Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease and disorder. And, you know, as that flares up, the anxiety is just revolting.
Yeah, totally.
It's about taking care of yourself and getting those blood tests, you know, homework. When I've done seminars, there might be 100 women in the room. And I'll say, has anyone in this first year had their iron and thyroid levels checked? The most I've ever had is about 5 hands go up.
Wow.
And so it's not happening, and it should be happening. Practitioners should be, you know, doctors, when you have a 6-week checkup, should be asking about this.
Absolutely. And we should be having at least 3 blood tests throughout a pregnancy, and then at least a 6-week checkup as well, blood test. And I'm as bad as anyone at the self-care, but if we don't look after ourselves, how can we look after our families? That's just...
We can't.
We've got to
it's the old aeroplane with the oxygen mask on, isn't it?
Yeah, it really, really is. And I've just literally had an iron infusion, and I feel like for 17 years I've never really got my iron levels back up. My ferritin stores have been really low and my hemoglobin's low. And I finally had an iron infusion. After meeting Oscar, I was okay, I better get onto this. And my next step is my thyroid with a subclinical hypothyroid. But it's so common, and we can fix these things. And that's why I'm sort of tracking my progress and sharing it on social media. And I can't believe the conversations that women are having about it, and how much they're having to almost fight to get their sort of iron infusions or support for that.
Wow, because the iron infusions are a lot more common now for women with newborns.
Yeah.
You know, throughout life, it just seems to be a bit more of an awareness, because there certainly wasn't that. My daughter's vegetarian and had a bleed when she had her baby. There was no iron infusion offered. And you know, they didn't even say, are you a vegetarian? Like, her levels were just borderline. So she had to take iron. And if you're taking iron, your levels are only going to come up about 1 point a month. It's going to take a long time for you to get that energy back. Whereas with an infusion, in a couple of weeks, you're starting to feel good again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I'm at like 2 weeks now, and I've just started to feel better. And it's so interesting when the body is taken care of, the mind works better and the emotions are more stable, just like you say. And so, yeah, the feeling of overwhelm and depression, anxiety was certainly there for me. But as a, forceful single mum entrepreneur, I just like push through. And I was like, sometimes, no, actually, I'm going to see what's going on in the body. And it's interesting. I feel so much more calm and I'm sleeping so much better. And yeah, it's
yes, we push through one more day. And we don't see that gap to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to say. Yeah, that's right. So what would your final message be to all the young families out there?
Be kind to yourself. You have nothing to prove. You don't have to do a whole load of things. You don't have to have your children all beautifully dressed on Instagram. You don't have to have your house looking amazing all the time. There's going to be mess. There's going to be tears. There's going to be, your child is going to behave badly in public. There are going to be nights when you just think you cannot wake another time, and really being kind to yourself and doing you. Whatever you need to do, because I think if you just listen to your heart and listen to your baby and trust that connection between you, I don't think you're going to go very far wrong.
Sounds perfect. I totally agree. Well, thank you for helping us surrender to the chaos and find the beauty and trust ourselves and all the great work that you do, Pinky. You're a legend. Thanks so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
I'm Nadine Richardson, and you've been listening to the She Births Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you would like to hear more of. You can find me and my team of amazing doulas and educators at shebirths.com and our awesome community on Instagram and Facebook. Within any good app store, you can download our free pregnancy guide via She Births, 2 separate words and plural, as well as access our range of online courses. Remember, when it comes to having a better birth, an easier transition into parenthood, your education is your empowerment. Don't forget to check out the catalogue of previous podcasts, and thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the show.